Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen groundswell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. I let my neighbor know where it is we do not need the wall. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down.
That the wall has suddenly become irrelevant. How do you measure such an astonishing moment in history?
Here's an idea. Instead of an endless, inert wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, line the boundary with 2,000 miles of solar and wind power plants. Use some of the energy to desalinate water from the Gulf of Mexico and the Pacific Ocean and ship it through pipelines to thirsty towns, businesses, and new farms along the entire border zone. I'm quoting from Scientific American, but I'm actually acquainted with this idea because Governor Mitch Daniels, president of Purdue University, wrote about it in the Washington Post. His headline, "A genuine big idea that could fix the border problem."
That we can tackle hard problems. But now signs abound of Americans losing that eagerness to move ahead boldly. Troubling signs that fearfulness was beginning to erode the spirit of adventure, the willingness to take risks, on which this nation's greatness was built and from which all progress originates.
I'm Luciano Castillo, the Kennedy Chair Professor of Renewable Energy and Power System at Purdue University. Around 2019, we created this big consortium. We wrote a white paper, and this concept of energy and water security along the US-Mexico border was born.
Some wildly imaginative researchers at a group of universities, including Texas A&M, Arizona State, Caltech, and Purdue, among others. It's a scientific community that has come together and said, we have something we think should be explored.
Looking at the climate change, the access of how much water, it is necessary that we push forward sustainable manufacturing. During September 23rd to the 24th, we're going to have this big symposium at the University of Texas El Paso. We want to be at the big scale, at the global level. Imagine this corridor spanning over 2,000 miles.
It has a unification possibility that most of the public policy suggestions out there these days don't.
Proving to people could flourish. What we want to be able to do is prevent a future catastrophe in Texas, California, New Mexico, Arizona, and for Mexico. I imagine having every border a major institute. People will have the opportunity to get advanced degrees, manufacturing, to work on renewable energy, water, and agriculture. Now let's go back to Texas.
We see multiple days over 100 degrees in the summer, and the AC never stops humming. What makes this so different?
We're so used to dealing with heat, we're not used to dealing with frigid temperatures. It's such a rare occurrence here that these companies just are not prepared for it to happen.
You saw the collapse of the power grid there because 90% is working in isolation.
It would generate enough electricity to meet the current agricultural and commercial needs of Texas.
It's the problem of this magnitude that will help us reach that level of impact. If you make an investment on a piece of concrete on a wall, you have to continue to put money to keep it in proper conditions.
A contentious, costly no man's land transformed into a corridor of opportunity.
If you make an investment on energy, water, and food, you have the basic ingredients, the means to attract manufacturing. I'm gonna set up my shop in the border because now I have an opportunity to hire people in the side of Mexico or in the side of the United States and create a unique value.
Would it also provide the necessary safety for ensuring border security?
As any significant infrastructure facility does, you would need protective surveillance. So as a natural consequence of these investments, which would be in many cases private, they would bring protection along with it.
A lot of the migrants, they are escaping violence.
They are dire circumstances, no running water, no electricity, no access to health care, and they are willing to take the risk to cross Mexico to get to the United States.
By creating projects in the US-Mexico side, there could be great opportunities to enhance their quality of life. We're not creating us versus them. When you look at solar, photovoltaic, and wind, the use of water is very, very, very minimal. Nuclear, coal, natural gas use water in the cooling process. We want to mitigate the use of water.
Solar, taken by itself, has a payback in less than a decade.
Over time, this project would pay off for itself.
We make it almost impossible to build anything big in this country.
You could build in the border the biggest technology corridor in the world.
If it weren't so tragic, it'd be comical how long it takes us, how many worthy projects never get built at all. Something that secures the border as it helps us leap ahead in green energy.
An idea that even sworn enemies can love.
A win-win for both sides.